Welcome. Today we are talking about perfectionism. And once again, my background has changed because I'm just trying to figure out where is a good place, and I haven't been loving my past two setups. So that's why it's this way. I am not a perfectionist by all means. Definitely not. I think I kind of used to be as a kid. I would kind of do things over and over and over again until I felt like it was really right. I think that kind of came with me being a competitive dancer, and if you've danced before in your life in a class, competitive or not, but especially competitively, you know that they are so keen on perfectionism because everything has to be on beat with your team. Even if you have a solo, it needs to be super spot on with the music, on tempo. And then I did a lot of music, so same thing with music. It's interesting because both of them are both really artsy things and kind of activities that you probably think wouldn't need to be perfect, but in reality they do, because you need to be on beat. Otherwise, you're not going to feel satisfied and it's not going to feel right. But then as I started to get older, interestingly enough, I actually felt like I became less of a perfectionist. And I think maybe this came with a little bit of laziness. I got tired, maybe a little bit burnt out, didn't really care as much as I got older. And I don't think either extreme is the best to be on, but I am definitely staying on the side of not choosing perfection and not chasing perfection. And here is why, and here is my opinion on it. I kind of mentioned earlier, have a really hard time putting 100% effort into everything that I do. This is something that I've struggled with for the past maybe 4 years. It's it takes me a lot. It takes me a lot of effort, and this drives my mom nuts, because she's always like, when you do something, do it well, do it 100%. And there are some days where I give it 100%. There are some days where I give it 20 or maybe 60 or maybe 70. And of course, it's not realistic to show up every single day and want to give 100% and do 100%. But I think trying to do 100% whatever you do, I believe is really important. Do I put that into practice all the time? No. Definitely not. And that is something that I've really been trying to be mindful of, something, especially the past year when I was in school. When I'm in class, try to be 100% present. Definitely did not do that. It's really hard sometimes to focus for an hour and a half or 2 or 3, 4 hours when you're doing a homework assignments and everything, all the above. But I think that when I used to be a perfectionist, and when I see perfectionist around me, something is admirable about that, but at the same time, I decide not to do it for a variety of reasons. I decide not to chase being perfect because in my mind, there's no such thing as perfect. There's definitely a situation where you could be lazy and you could put a lack of effort into something, but there's also a situation where you drive yourself absolutely crazy. It's like the same thing. You drive yourself crazy when you're lazy because you're not getting to where you want to be. And then if you're just chasing perfectionism or being a perfectionist 24/7, you're going to never feel satisfied. And feeling satisfied is a very difficult feeling, I think, to have happen to you, or for you to choose that. But that's exactly my point. See, the thing is that we always hear, nobody's perfect, nothing is perfect in life. How can something be perfect? The simple answer, in my opinion, is that it can't. And I agree with all those sayings, nobody is perfect. There is no perfect person. There's no perfect situation. There's no perfect family. There's no perfect relationship, etc. And just because it's not perfect doesn't mean that it's not good enough. It doesn't mean that it's not great. It doesn't even mean that it's not beautiful. It just means that it isn't perfect. And I think there's so many kids out there and so many young people out there that just romanticize and idealize these situations that they see to be this quote unquote perfect scenario when there simply just is nothing perfect. Like the perfect thing is us being imperfect. And just because something isn't perfect doesn't mean that it's not okay. And I think that's what kind of makes something valuable and worthy because it's not perfect. I've always hated the way that my eyes looked. I've said this a million times and probably to all my closest friends. I always think that they're uneven. I wanted to get surgery so bad. I even went to Korea during my gap year. Not just for surgery, for my gap year, but I went there, I went to a surgeon. He started drawing all the lines on me. I freaked out. I was like, I don't want to touch my face because I don't want to go in there with a knife. And then I thought about anesthesia. Okay, too paranoid to put myself voluntarily in an operating room. But I I have a really hard time accepting the way that my face might be shaped in my eyes. And, some days are better than others, but I think, like most people in general, we all have our physical insecurities. And I remember when I was in that surgeon's waiting room, not the waiting room, but the place, the consulting room, where they consult you and they try to figure out how to fix whatever it is that you want to. I realized if I get my eyes fixed, what else am I going to want to have? A nose job? My jaw shaved down? Am I going to want to get lipo? And there's nothing wrong with, I'm not pinpointing just plastic surgery, but I think there's this notion that if I were to get one thing fixed, then I'm going to be considered perfect in my eyes until something else comes up, until another situation comes up, or until another problem arises, until I point something else in my body or face that I don't like and I want to touch it again. It's just never going to be enough. And that's where I feel like perfectionism or being a perfectionist can be dangerous, because I think we've all been there. We've all wanted this picture perfect life, whether you come from hard times where you literally have nothing and you have to make your way up there, or whether you come from a rich family and you wonder, what else could be out there? Like everything else needs to be perfect. And one, I think it's exhausting for anyone who has to go through that. And two, it's just kind of not realistic. I think a lot of us forget that life is a classroom, that life is somewhere and something that you need to experience, and it's not gonna be good or perfect all the time. The perfect journey is you just taking the journey and seeing where it takes you, learning from your mistakes, growing from that, having fun, feeling sad, feeling hopeless, feeling happy, feeling exhilarated, feeling passionate about something. And there's no perfect mold. And it's so funny because I think that being a perfectionist also comes from someone comparing themselves to another person. Because the thing is, we only see the outside of other people's lives. Your friends can tell you whatever, but you don't necessarily sure if that's all the details that they're telling you. Or you can go to a dinner and some person could be bragging about how great their week was and how so many accomplishments were, or they accomplished so much that week. In reality, they actually might have only accomplished half that list and just trying to externally prove something to other people. But once you start comparing yourself, you no longer think, you automatically think that that person's perfect and that person has their stuff all figured out. And it's just simply not true, in my opinion. If I were to hold everyone to the standard of being perfect, including myself, it would just make all of us go insane. I think it's a good thing to be comfortable with the idea of the imperfect world. the pursuit and chase of being perfect, I think can be a road that leads to a lot of anxiety and sadness and maybe the feeling of loneliness. When we start to idealize this world to be perfect, I think that's when it becomes really dangerous. And part of being a perfectionist can stem from kind of control issues, I feel like, because I've experienced this. I feel sometimes I start to lose control, I start to lose myself, and I just feel like everything's falling apart and it's the end of the world, when in actuality, it's just really not. It's just how life is supposed to go. And after you get over that hump, you start to realize when you look back, like, oh, okay, I get it. That's why that happened, 2 years ago. And so I can understand this today. And I know that in school systems, we're taught that failure is bad, that you shouldn't get an F, that you're not trying if you get an F. And I honestly think that's the biggest load of crock that one kid can hear. Because at the end of the day, we need to fail. Like, again, going back to the whole idea of like perfection like does not exist, or being perfect does not exist, more than likely we are going to fail at something, whether that's at school, whether it's at sports, getting rejected by somebody, whatever that is. We have to. If you don't fail at something, there is absolutely no way in my mind that you can learn and you can move forward and you can grow resilience, you can grow discipline, you grow grit as a kid, and eventually achieve the goals that you really want to achieve. I think the idea I think the idea of perfection should be kept at an idea. I think it should be kept as a thought, but not something or a goal that should be achieved. Because going back to that whole chasing aspect, I don't think that's healthy. Because I feel like when I have before, when you continuously try to go on the path of trying to be the perfect kid and stay out of trouble and be the whatever it is, you will see soon soon see that the path is honestly just never ending and will never be satisfied, and you'll always think of another hypothetical and eventually realize that again we are pursuing something that just isn't possible. And when we have the idea of perfect in our heads, it also, I've noticed, holds me back and can hold some of you guys back from really starting something that you've always wanted to try, being a little bit different, going after something that you normally wouldn't do. Because you believe that the first time that you're going to cook that first meal, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be fine. It's going to be amazing. It's just going to be exactly like what you saw in the video. But that's just not how it works. It's pretty much an anomaly that kind of happens. And the fact that the idea of perfectionism can hold someone back from really chasing their dreams pains me. Because we all got to start from somewhere. And more than likely, the first 1, 2, 3 tries, you might not get it. You might get beginner's luck the first time and the second time flop. So I'm not saying don't put in an effort to the things that you really want to do and try your best, but really try and understand the difference between like what you're chasing, between trying your best and chasing perfectionism. Let me know what your thoughts are on perfectionism, are what you feel like perfectionism means to you, your struggles with being trying to be perfect. I'm curious. Bye.